Good day, everybody. How's it going this summer? It is a hot one, and it's just been muggy. Hot and muggy. So here I am in fursuit, which is a great idea when it's hot and muggy. But we're kind of I'm trying to get back into the swing of things. I'll try to make a recording every Monday and then print it on Wednesday and see what happens from there. Try to stick to a schedule, dang it. Maybe if I do it here, I'll start doing it at work again. Um, so this story, what we're going to go over today is going over the numbers that came out from Anthrocon this particular year, and how accurate I was. Apparently, we're back to quote unquote normal, where normal is we're growing and it's crazy. The Roaring Twenties are still continuing onwards and upwards, guys. So. The final announcement was about $100,000 in charity, and the total was 17,639 attendees at Anthrocon 2024, making it the world's largest furry convention yet again. But put an asterisk there. If you look at the Wikipedia, you will see that you will see the words for Anthrocon 2024 and Anthrocon 2023 about it, being the largest furry con once again. I am kind of a person who doesn't like to do that. I'm kind of a person who is, it's sort of like track and field when you have runners going around the field and it's like, oh, that person's out in front of this person, but it's like they start at different positions, right? So it's not really fair to me for Midwest Fur Fest for Anthrocon to say, yay, we're larger, and it's like, but they come before Midwest Fur Fest as far as like the year goes. So like it's not really fair to compare, Midwest Fur Fest's 2023 numbers to Anthrocon's 2024 numbers, because Anthrocon has had another year to grow. And especially when it is projected, right? When it becomes projected that the next year is going to be basically like, oh, it's just a rat race, right? It's just a horse race between these two guys, and it's not really definitive yet, because it's like my projected numbers for Midwest Fur Fest is larger than Anthrocon, and that happened in 2022, it happened in 2023, and so in those years I was like, no, it's still not, like, because Midwest Fur Fest hasn't happened yet. So we have to know Midwest Fur Fest numbers before we can determine whether or not Anthrocon has regained the leadership position. But I will say this might be the year, according to the projections that I have. So let's take a look at the numbers real quick before we get into like how this growth has been really much of a pain for Anthrocon. That was a big story this year. So we have here 17,000. So my estimates based on the delta between 2022 and 2023 was 17,580. And it ended up being 17,639, which is only like, what, 59? 59, being off 59 people in a crowd of 17,500 is not bad. That is less than 1% off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to replace this number with this number. Now, even before I replace this number, and I might have mentioned this last year if I did a video on it, I don't remember. It's been a while, unfortunately. I don't know. Doing this in first, it's not easy. But basically, as you can see down here, the estimation for Midwest Fur Fest is 17,453. So even before I replaced it with this, it was already less than it. So of any year, this year may be the year that Anthrocon, and this is the projected numbers on this part, basically overtakes Midwest Fur Fest to once again become the largest furry convention in the world. In the world. Yeah, so they are. So this year might be the year, but I am not so confident in it as I was when we went back to, like, let's say 2017, where Midwest Fur Fest, had 5,606 in 2015, and basically had a growth of about 1,500. And basically this one had 6,389, had 7,300. So the growth between this one and this one and this one and this one was so significantly dispersed that I literally could predict that Midwest Fur Fest was going to overtake Anthrocon in 2017. It did by about 1,000 attendees, and that's how not close it was. And because of that, I was able to make an article about, and I was able to actually 6 months in advance, as soon as Anthrocon put out their numbers, I was able to commission somebody for art to kind of, put on the front page of what I was going to publish in December and do that kind of a thing. So, and I believe that was I'd have to find the article, but you'd probably be able to find it if you go to December 2017 on Flavor. You'd be able to find it. But it was so easy to predict that it was okay, well, and that was right here. So it's not so easy to predict this time. It's certainly not one that I would put money on. Midwest Fur Fest could come up above projections and very easily retain their largest furry convention standing. That being said, I was at Furry Week in Atlanta, and I must note this: furry, I'll start with a disclaimer in that the people at Anthrocon are working their tail off, particularly the volunteers. I will say this: I saw of the issues and dramas that usually happen on social medias and things like that, there is maybe one or two critiques that were not individual based. There was 2 attendees who basically lost their luggage on the way to Anthrocon. The airlines basically lost their fursuit somewhere in transit and basically ruined the convention for those 2 individuals. That's not really in Anthrocon's control. So at the end of the day, for what happened and for the issues that it had, I think Anthrocon did very well for itself. It sounded like a lot of people were having a good time, so maybe that that time was very well worth the wait. I also wanted to share this. Let's see if it pops up here. So I released a sort of a poll during Anthrocon, and obviously I wanted to wait a few weeks afterwards before kind of discerning anything from this, and even then it's not really that scientific. As you can see, most people, 84 of the people who voted out of 102, just didn't attend and wanted to see the results. But as you can see, there were 4 people who waited over 5 hours for this. And by the way, that's not too insignificant. There's a sort of a bell curve thing that's happening where it's a lot of people waited 2 to 3 hours, and then so basically 2 hours plus is quite a significant amount. There's 3 people here who waited less than 30 minutes, and those are probably there's one of 2 kinds of people. Number one, they are people that kind of came in late or came in really early and got really lucky, or they were basically super sponsors, because Flavor is read by a lot of people in the fur. So it wouldn't be any surprise to me if 1 or 2 of them were doing super sponsorships or stuff like that would let them skip the reg line. But I will say this: the mainstream media was covering this particular situation, and that's how big this has gotten, and this is how sort of bad this has gotten as far as these things go. Basically, it was Let's see. See, I don't want to watch the video anyway. So the ad blocker came in handy. So let's take a look at this particular thing. I won't go over too big, but basically, CBS News covered it, and basically waiting hours long things to get into Anthrocon, and basically it discussed the numbers. Somebody said they had to wait 5.5 hours, and it was really hot outside. So kind of crazy. A lot of people have been discussing. It's like, Anthrocon should really consider updating the way that it does badges and conventions. And I will agree. I went to Furry Week Atlanta for the first time this year. It was the first convention that kind of used those RFID badges that go on your wrist. And I will say this, I do not recall being in line for anything more than like 30 to 40 minutes at the worst of the worst. And I had to go through line 3 times. Like when I was at Furry Week in Atlanta, my card stopped reading, and then I had to walk down to the registration, go through line again. But this was like during the convention at like Friday, I believe it was. The first time I went through was like Thursday, and I think it took like a half hour. Very quick, a lot of people, very much all hands on deck. The RFI code thing, it's like, get out your QR code. They scan the QR code, and then like they tie it to your badge. And then basically, I don't know the wizardry behind it, but basically it saves them time because they can literally take the wristband things like right from a pile. Like they can just have a pile of those wristbands and they just pull one out. And it's like, doesn't matter who you are, here it is. Now that was something that when I first went through the line, I kind of felt a little bit like, oh, that sucks. There's no like art or anything like that. But thinking back on it, it's like, I would rather like have a wristband that, is around my wrist for the weekend and, deal with that and only wait in line for like less than an hour than having this badge that has like a, super special art on it or whatever, and like them having to take longer, because the thing that takes longer is not only the whole like, oh, they're mailing it or they're doing it in person thing, is that they have to ID you. I mean, they ID you in both of them, but they have to ID you, and then they have to find out who your furry name is, and then they got to go to the cart of all the things that are printed out, right? And basically find your badge, give you the lanyard, and all that stuff. And all that time, right, it takes to find your furry name, find your badge that's been printed especially for you, right? That takes probably the time, and that's probably why conventions like Anthrocon and Furry Midwest Fur Fest take longer than Furry Weekend Atlanta. It's basically those FID things. Now, there's also people saying, well, they can't, some people are like, well, they could mail out badges, but then it's like, well, you have to ID a person. But then again, it's like, if you can kind of combine the two ideas, right? Because like, if you think about it, it's like, well, they'll mail the badge, it'll make lines go faster, but then it's like, how do you know that the person who is showing up with that badge is the person who they say they are? And if you maybe add some sort of RFID code to the back of those badges, if you want to have the traditional badges and you don't want to have the wrist lanyard, I would say like having some sort of maybe RFID thing at the back of it, and they can like, put your name to it at the con, and it's like, okay, I've seen your ID, I'm gonna put your thing in there, information in the FID, and activate your FID now. that could be a thing that could happen. I think, I don't know. Like as I said, I'm not a technical person. I'll say this, like the thing about the wrist thing. A lot of furries see it as infamous because of that. The first time they introduced it, there was a fursuiter who was like holding up the dance because they had to keep going like this and it kept failing. And they eventually had to like move their fur out of the way. And a lot of people are like, "Oh, look at all the inconvenience it causes." And I've seen it in person; it's not that bad. Um, if you and I've had it fail, and the way to fix it if it fails is you go down and you say, "Hey, this is failing," and then of course, with me, the first time I went down there and it failed, it succeeded as soon as I put the wrist down. And they're like, "Well, I guess it's working now. Go ahead and try again." So I went back up, or went back out, found the nearest, like, one of those things I can try it on, and it failed again. And I went back and I said, and I was in fursuit, so they knew who I was. I'm like, "It's not working. Like, it works on this thing. It's not working on those things." And then they gladly changed it. It wasn't that much of a muss. It wasn't that much of a fuss. Even experiencing the technical difficulties, it didn't really. And as I said, even going through the line multiple times, not more than 45 minutes, 3 times. So that being said, other issues that occurred. Obviously, there was the very, very long lines going into the con. Some people missed like the Thursday activities and stuff like that, and Kage's been getting a headache because some of the furries have been one or a handful of furries have been really adamant about, "I was in line on Thursday and I missed the things, arg." So yeah, I mean, he's dealing with that. The other thing though, was the basically the parade, and the parade is the big thing for Anthrocon. And one of the big reasons I don't really go anymore is because I did the parade twice. The second time was really hot, and like the first time was, it was cool, it was unique. I was so like ingrained in the moment. If you were to go back and look for the parade for 2015, I was near the back and basically had Kage on my tail the whole time. So if you would find probably the back of the thing videotaped by the staff, you'll see me walking there with him chasing me with a freaking blowhorn. I could probably find it if I wanted to, and I can link it. But it was very cool. It was very unique. It was very new. The second year, it was like it wasn't as unique. It wasn't as new. I didn't get as much out of it. It was really hot, and I'm like, all right, I think I've done enough of that. And I think a lot of furries this year found there was an issue because, let's face it, there are as many fursuiters now as there were attendees back in the day. I think my first Anthrocon was 2011, and it was my very first furry convention. And I believe I have the numbers in here. I do. So the number of attendees at Anthrocon 2011 was 4,400. There, I think, was about 5,000 fursuiters this year, give or take. There were more fursuiters this year than there were attendees in 2011. And you have to wrap your head around that because not only are the lines impacting attendance, they're now impacting the fursuit parade. And a lot of the larger furry conventions, such as Furry Week in Atlanta and Midwest Fur Fest, did away with the parades. Midwest Fur Fest had parades, I think, up until 2018, 2017. I think, and I can see, and you can see kind of why they decided to do away with it is because there was no real places to go out and do a parade. It was literally done inside the hotel, and basically the logistics and the sort of blockages that would occur due to a lot of furries walking around the hotel up in the already crowded foyer, it just wouldn't work with the size that it is now. It's already super crowded, and the last time I went to Midwest Fur Fest, I think, was 2022 or 2021, one of those two. and it was shoulder to shoulder on some nights, and it's like there's no way you could do what they did with the parade. So they do the menagerie instead, which is like furries hanging out near the ballroom area. And even that's probably really crowded at this point. So the point is that even though Anthrocon has sort of kind of come up with the solution of having furries march out in the street, even that's starting to get a little bit. It's starting to get a little bit troublesome. There was a handful of complaints about people who basically took 5 hours to get from one end, like basically waiting to go out and parade to the end of their parade, basically. Like there were people, it's like by the time they had gotten through the parade, the block party was over. And if they could even manage to sweat it out in their fursuit, until they hit that particular situation, until they were able to get out to do the parade, they were already sweating bullets. They were already like, waiting and getting exhausted just by the waiting. An interesting thing is that I think Pharaoh went down one year. I think it was 2023, or it was 2022. I can't remember which. I didn't go to Anthrocon. I haven't been to Anthrocon, I think, since before the pandemic. But basically he went down there the year after the pandemic, I think, and he came up with a really good idea, Pharaoh, and he's a blue fox who lives in the local area where I live. And he came up with a really good idea, and that was, instead of joining the parade from the parade side, he basically, went out into the crowds, right? He went out into where they had closed off things for the crowds and like where the audience should be. And he went out wandering about that particular area so that he could engage with the crowd and engage with the parade from the sidelines, as opposed to being part of the parade proper. And as the parade keeps getting larger and larger and larger, it may be that Anthrocon might need to put a limiter on it. And the problem is you can't really put a limiter on it with these old badges. If you had that RFID thing that I talked about earlier, that solution builds into this problem, because during Furry Week in Atlanta, when I was going, like, there was the Mystery Skulls concert that I went to go with my friends, and like basically what they would do is they would say, scan your badges, scan your badges, scan your badges, and as people were coming into the room, eventually they would know how many people were in that room, and like basically they could stop the line and say, okay, it's full. And so basically what they would do is, on the way out, if you left the concert at any time, at the exit doors there was also a scan, and you would scan your way out. And so the person who was maintaining the room would know, okay, like 20 people just left, I can let in like 20 more, right? So, all right, 20 more people, come on in, right? They could get a sense for that. And I think that's going to be necessary as this convention gets bigger and bigger, and as things get larger and larger. They're going to need a way to determine, it's like, how many people are in this parade, and we need to cut it off at a certain point, right? We can't just keep having, unless the goal is to get into Guinness. But, there's some things that are more important than records. People having a good time and enjoying themselves, I think is important, and having it so that the city like knows, it's like, okay, the thing is beginning now and it's ending now. Like, how many people can you get through per second? What's the cap that we're gonna do? And then have the rest of the furries just hang out in the streets and kind of start the block party off, as it were. You know what I mean? So I think that would be a way to solve that particular problem. But once again, not on staff. They have their own goals, they have their own ideas, and they'll probably do that. Now, obviously, a lot of people said if you want to help out, you need to volunteer, and that is a very good idea. It's like, well, why don't you volunteer, Rue? You seem to think you know what you're doing all the time. It's like, because I'm volunteering already in this fandom, and that is on this stuff and on Flera. And this is something I'd mentioned to other people. It's like, it's kind of a conflict of interest for me to go into volunteering as a staff member on a convention thing, because I'm going to see things that might be problematic, and I may have to bite my tongue because of an NDA or things like that. And it kind of puts that, it gives me those two roles become at odds, right? If there's something important that comes, that information that I gain from being within the group, and I don't tell the people who are attending, then that makes it so that people can't really trust my conversations or my thoughts on things or my view on things from as just an attendee, as just a normal person, as just part of the masses, because it gives a kind of conflict of interest thing. So, you know, as interesting as that might be as an experience, and maybe one day I might say, okay, I'm going to volunteer, but I'm just going to write about the experience of volunteering and how it works and how it functions. But then I'm just going to do it for 1 year and then go. And probably for a convention that is like smaller or like not a big enchilada convention, that might be in the books. But as far as like, you know, volunteering for a larger convention, no, not really. But I do think that the people who do that and, you know, put up with all the angry attendees who are like, I just want my badge, give me my dang badge, I've been waiting in line for 5 hours. Always go at these larger conventions, always make sure that you have a group of friends that you really want to catch up with for the next like 2 or 3 or 4 hours, and make sure that you meet up to get in line with them. I think that's one of the biggest important things too, if to mitigate the wait in the line. Because here's the thing, at a larger convention, once you're gone, like everybody's going to be going like chaos, like hungry hippo balls bouncing off the sides of the things. And so the best thing that you can do is, if you know you have a group of people that you, particularly that you're not rooming with, right? If you're rooming with the people, you're going to see them later anyway. But if you have a group of people that you really want to see and you're not rooming with, attendance line is the perfect time. Like have a line posse, right? Have like a get a telegram group together of like, you know, 10 people or so. It's like, you know, RSVP, like everybody gets to RSVP a person in front and behind them, and like then you all kind of get in the line together. But obviously, like, it might not work out, and it's like, well, I'm not going to be there until later, and it's like, okay, well, I'll wait for you, but then we'll skip that. And so obviously it's like there's a bunch of logistic problems that can happen with those kind of things. But I think if you like go, okay, we're all going to try to show up there around Thursday at like you know, noon or something, you know, try to go for that. Obviously, another thing that they could try to do is just have like getting like super sponsor badges and stuff like that. Obviously, you can do that if you don't have a lot of friends but you have a lot of money. You can always like upgrade your convention badge to skip the lines too. So I mean, obviously, like the mainstream press has covered this situation. It's obviously a big deal. If it is an issue with the laws as to like why you can't do the whole like mail in your badges thing or find a solution that works, I think at some point you may need to consider capping the attendance. And I know that sounds like that sounds pretty extreme, especially when I'm doing these convention attendee rat race things every once in a while. But at some point, it's like, do we want to become the next Disney World, really? Like, if I wanted to wait in lines, I would fly down to Florida and go to Disney World, right? And, you know, and pay to get around the lines, right? Like, if I wanted that kind of experience with furry costume people, I'd go to Disney World. At some point, it might be like, okay, we need to cap things off and like say this is the amount of people that can attend, right? Like maybe the growth can't last forever. I'm sure that but I'm sure that there's plenty of room. I'm sure that there's, you know, plenty of logistical finagling that can be done to, you know, make things better in the future, and hopefully that is the case. But this Rue's been rambling for quite a bit now on on this kind of thing. So thank you very much for listening. If you like this kind of content, kick that like, kick the subscribe button, kick a comment in the comment section. You can also, if you have attended Anthrocon, you can reply to the there. I'll have a link to that little survey in the thing below, and you can basically vote on how long you waited in line at Anthrocon this year. Will Anthrocon be the largest furry convention of the world again this year? Once again, it already is. I counted right when the attendance is red. No, I don't. So, it might. We might get there. It might be there. We'll see. Very exciting. Have a good one, guys. See you next time.